So many people getting an override with promises of great wealth, that the only ones that start it are usually ones with the wealth, and then they either break it or close it up because eventually they expect to have it come back on them. When that happened, the government came down and landed on Dr. Jacobs, and they wanted to control it. Well, it finally got to court, and the court ruled that MSM is a food, it is not a drug, it is not an additive, keep your hands off of it. After that, they hassled Dr. Jacobs, even though it was proven that it was a food, that it got to a point that if you call him up and ask him about it, he just says, oh, it's for animals only, doesn't do anything particularly, it's just a food. Well, he's not lying, but he's not really telling you the story either, because he doesn't know whether he's talking to ATF or who he's talking to. And a lot of people are running scared of saying things. Well, we still have our freedom of speech, and no, I can't put a lot of things in writing. I can talk to you about health. Now, I'm not prescribing, but if I explain how it works, you can decide in your own self whether these are the kind of problems. After this happened and it was ruled a food, everybody fought over horse owners because they needed $300 worth at a time. Kitty cats need $3 worth. Who's going to spend the time talking to kitty cat owners when you have horse owners? So, where this isn't in the PDRs, the ready references, very few people can find anything written about it. I've talked to Livermore Laboratories, and yes, they have the spectroanalysis for it. No, they don't report on your hair and your blood how much MSM is in your system, and their excuse is nobody asked them to. But they can actually report on how much you have in your system. So basically, doctors and things, when they're reading down the chemical reports on how much aluminum and mercury and all this stuff you've got in your system, there is no listing on MSM. So basically, it has been a real well-kept secret. The way I came across it, well, a lot of you probably have heard of me and my dad indirectly. Back in the 40s, we started the Rich Plan, the Mana Plan, the Freezer Food Plans, where you bought a freezer, and then bought frozen food in volume, saved enough to pay for the freezer. The first TV dinners was my mom's meatloaf and baked potatoes, sliced and buttered and cheese on them, ready to warm up. The first frozen bread dough you thaw, raise, stick in the oven, and bake. The first Teflon coated containers, we worked on that one. The coin-operated TV chairs and bus terminals in the airports, where you sit down, drop a quarter in the armrest, and the TV comes on for a half hour. The water-filled car bumpers and freeway dividers that you see on the freeways, where they divide the cells, where if you hit them you don't get killed like in the movie Speed. And they used to be on your police cars and your buses. Those are all our products. Dad's the motivator, my brother's the tightwad, and I'm the mechanic. All my life I've got to know how things work. I'm not satisfied knowing they work. If you hand me a handgun, I take it apart, put it back together just to see how what they did. That's just built into me. Well, let's put it this way. The good Lord made me that way, and then he shoved me around and made me rub my nose in different things until I was in a position that when I came across MSM, I realized kind of what was there. Otherwise, we'd have been happily going around with our water bumper business and making lots of money and saving lives, and I wouldn't have known about this. Well, in the process with our TV chairs, I was going up towards San Francisco to get the UL approval on our flammability of our TV chairs. And I came across a wrecker sitting broadside the freeway at night in a rainstorm with no flares and nothing out to guide you around the wreck. Well, when my lights picked it up this rainstorm, I was pretty close, and it was so wet and oily that when I hit my brakes, I waterplaned it. It wasn't hanging on. So rather than go through the cable or kill a bunch of people, not knowing which side of the wrecker they were standing on, I elected to hit the wrecker and try and absorb the energy that way and not kill anybody. Well, I hit him at about 15 miles an hour because I'd gotten her down pretty good before I actually hit it. The soft nose, because the frame went underneath the side of the wrecker, came back and hit me. The seat belt jammed. Of course, the seat belts will always jam as long as there's any pressure against them. That's why you have to cut yourself out of the car if you go in the water. In this case, the seat shifted forward, far enough forward that put pressure on it, and the buckle would not release. The left arm was broken in 2 places. The left thigh was broken in 4. The kneecap hit the heater, and it shattered the kneecap, and I cracked the right wrist. Well, I was still mobile, and I turned the engine off, but the engine caught on fire. And the engine compartment did stay closed, but it turned cherry red, and like a heater, it was charcoaling me. And I grabbed coats and everything and put it between me and the heat. When I set up off the dash, I said, hey, the Lord ain't through with me yet. He's got something else for me to do. The question is, how sore am I going to be when I get through healing? Well, they let me come to in the, well, it's just below Bakersfield, little town there. I can't think of the name, start with T, but it's not Tustin, but anyway. And the bishop was there, and he said, Elder Rich, your life's been saved, so if they amputate your right leg, don't feel bad about it. I said, I got more faith than that. You're crazy. Well, they took me, got on the phone, called the doctor up in Utah. He flew me back to Salt Lake, and he spent 6 months sewing me together. I was charcoaled from the armpit down below the knee, clear to the bone. And that thin skin that they borrowed off the rest of my body to cover the area went down, out around the tendon, back in and down. Because the only thing that saved my leg was the tendon didn't burn too, but it burnt the flesh away from it. So I was flat down the side of the leg. I was purple, and I had 65 feet of tear along the dotted line grafting marks, keloids. Between adhesions and scar tissue in my knees and ankles from being held still for so long, if I walked up the distance of this room 3 times, I'd be crying. I worked for a dealership as a line mechanic for Sandy Boulevard Dodge. I could make 3 trips to the parts room. The 4th trip, they'd carry me out the car to go home. I popped 8 pills a day for hay fever. My Afrin was down to once every 15 minutes to breathe. I was so addicted to it. After 12 years of pain, a friend of mine asked me to sell some pet products and help him get his business going. So I was selling the flea products. One day when I was talking to a veterinarian, he said, try this white powder. He says, if you sniff it, your nose heals, you ain't going to get high. It's not cocaine. 3 days later, I could outmarch my troops. And instead of being just a desk sergeant, now I'm a command sergeant major in the Oregon State Defense Forces, which is our militia, which are nice people that help the policemen, the firemen, and under state statute, we take over state property if the National Guard gets called up. We are not evil people. Anyway, being able to march with the troops really was a wonderful thing for me. And where before I used to kept saying, if I can get by another 6 months and not be hand-fed in a nursing home, I'll have done good. I haven't had a flu or a cold for 8 years. I'm 62. I can outwork all my kids. But I was ugly. 65 feet of grafting marks. You know how the people with burns in the neck, you see them pull, the tissue's all hard and it pulls and ugly? That's the way I looked. Well, we developed a lotion to get rid of Dr. Roger Bell's carpal tunnel, because eating it wasn't going right to the wrist, and he wanted to put it right in that wrist. And he was using cortisone salve, but the cortisone is so deadly, he didn't want to use it anymore. So I put it in my Flea hot spotless lotion, which all the groomers had been using, because having their hands in soap and water all day long, they're cracked and sore, and they usually put bags on their hands with bag balm in it to try and keep their hands soft. Well, our lotion was better than the bag balm, but they didn't like telling everybody they were using dog lotion. So I put the MSM in the dog lotion, and we put a label on it saying Rich's apricot lotion, so it sounded like people lotion, gave it to Dr. Bell, and in 2 weeks his carpal tunnel was gone. Well, I got thinking about it. I'm flat, I'm purple, I don't have enough blood vessels in there to hardly keep it alive. Every time I broke the skin, it took 3 months to heal. Very little feeding of the tissue. So I rubbed the lotion into my leg. And After 20 years of ugly, in 2 years,